Senator Warren.
Let's be clear. I'm sorry, who did you call on?
Senator Warren.
Sorry.
I do think that this really is about leadership and accountability. When the mayor says that he apologized, listen very closely to the apology. The language he used is about stop and frisk. It's about how it turned out. Now, this isn't about how it turned out. This is about what it was designed to do to begin with. It targeted communities of color. It targeted black and brown men from the beginning. And if you want to issue a real apology, then the apology has to start with the intent of the plan as it was put together and the willful ignorance day by day by day of admitting what was happening, even as people protested in your own street, shutting out the sounds of people telling you how your own policy was breaking their lives. You need a different apology.
Senator,
here,
thank you.
Chuck, can I respond briefly?
Let me get Senator Klobuchar. We're going to stay on this topic. We're going to stay on this topic, but I want to get something in here with Senator Klobuchar. When you were the top prosecutor in Minneapolis, Senator, there were at least 24 instances where police were involved in the deaths of civilians. None of those officers were prosecuted. You did prosecute a black teenager who was sentenced to life in prison, despite what are now serious doubts about the evidence. Now, the Minneapolis chapter of the NAACP has recently called for you to suspend your campaign over that case because some new evidence has come out since. Big picture, why should black and Latino voters trust your judgment now if it appears you may have gotten it wrong then?
First, I'll start with that case. It is very clear that any evidence, if there is new evidence, even old evidence, it should be reviewed by that office and by the county attorney. That must happen. I have called for that review. This was a case involving an 11-year-old African-American girl named Taisha Edwards who was shot doing her homework at her kitchen table. 3 people were convicted. One of the cases is the one that is being was investigated by a journalist, and I think it's very important that that evidence come forward. In terms of the police shootings that you noted, those went to a grand jury, every single one of them, and I've made very clear for months now that, like so many prosecutors, I think those cases, in my time, they were all going to the grand jury. It was thought that was the best way to handle them in many jurisdictions.
You think you should have spoke up? You didn't speak up at the time, should you?
I actually did speak up on something very similar, and that was when our police chief in Minneapolis tried to take the investigations of police shootings into his own hands, and I strongly said I disagreed with that. Now I do believe also that a prosecutor should make those decisions herself. And the last thing I will say, because you asked the question about voting, I have the support of African Americans in my community in every election. I had strong support and strong support of leadership, and that's because I earned it. And this is going to be on me to earn it. You earn it with what you stand for when it comes to equal opportunity. You earn it with the work that I have done, the leadership I've shown on voting rights. And yes, you earn it with the work that must be done on criminal justice reform.
I want to talk about transparency here because many Democrats, including most of you on stage, have criticized President Trump for his lack of transparency. But Senator Sanders, when you were here in Las Vegas in October, you were hospitalized with a heart attack. Afterwards, you pledged to make, quote, all your medical records public. You've released 3 letters from your doctors, but you now say you won't release anything more. What happened to your promise of full transparency?
Well, I think we did. Let me tell you what happened. First,
Read yourself past the gossip mags, past the agendas, the bias, the partisan pandering. Read yourself better.
and furthermore, we released reports from 2 leading Vermont cardiologists who described my situation, and by the way, who said Bernie Sanders is more than able to deal with the stress and the vigor of being president of the United States. Hey, follow me around the campaign trail, 3, 4, 5 events a day. See how you're doing compared to me.
Look. Mayor Buttigieg, you've been critical about transparency on this stage and people needing to do better. Is that response from Senator Sanders enough for you?
No, it's not, because first of all, let me say we're all delighted that you are in fighting shape. And at the same time, transparency matters, especially living through the Trump era. Now, under President Obama, the standard was that the president would release full medical records, do a physical, and release the readout. I think that's the standard that we should hold ourselves to as well. Now, President Trump lowered that standard. He said just a letter from a doctor is enough, and a lot of folks on this stage are now saying that's enough. But I am certainly prepared to get a physical, put out the results. I think everybody here should be willing to do the same. But I'm actually less concerned about the lack of transparency on Sanders' personal health than I am about the lack of transparency on how to pay for his health care plan, since he said that it's impossible to even know how much it's going to cost. And even after raising taxes on everybody making $29,000, there is still a multi-trillion-dollar hole. Matter of fact, if you add up his policies altogether, they come to $50 trillion. He's only explained $25 trillion worth of revenue, which means that the hole in there is bigger than the size of the entire economy of the United States.
Mayor,
the time has come to level with the American people on matters personal and on matters of policy.
Thank you. Senator Sanders, quickly.
Okay. Let's level. All right, let's level, Pete. Under your plan, which is a maintenance continuation of the status quo, can I finish? The average American today is paying $12,000 a year. That's what that family is paying. 20% of a $60,000 income, $12,000 a year. Highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Just the other day, a major study came out from Yale epidemiologists in Lancet, one of the leading medical publications in the world. What they said, my friends, is Medicare for All will save $450 billion a year. Because we are eliminating the absurdity of thousands of separate plans that require hundreds of billions of dollars of administration. And by the way, ending the $100 billion a year in profiteering from the drug companies and the insurance companies.
Really important.
Mayor Bloomberg, I want to go to you on this.
By the way, my plan is the status quo, and that's false. Look, if my plan is the status quo, why was it attacked by the insurance industry the moment it came out? And on issue after issue after issue, this is what Senator Sanders is saying. If you're not with him, if you're not all the way on his side, then you must be for the status quo. Well, you know what? That is a picture that leaves most of the American people out.
I want to go to Mayor Bloomberg on this transparency issue.
Could I
Very
comment
briefly on transparency, Mayor Bloomberg, your campaign has said that you would eventually release your tax records when it comes to transparency. But people are already voting now. Why should Democratic voters have to wait?
It just takes us a long time. Unfortunately or fortunately,
could I comment on that?
Fortunately, I make a lot of money, and we do business all around the world, and we are preparing it. The number of pages will probably be in the thousands of pages. I can't go to TurboTax, but I put out my tax return every year for 12 years in City Hall. We will put out this one. It tells everybody everything they need to know about every investments that I make and where the money goes. And the biggest item is all the money I give away. And we list that, every single donation I make, and you can get that from our foundation anytime you want.
Okay, yeah, I'm just looking at my husband in the front row that has to do our taxes all the time. We probably could go to TurboTax. And the point of this is I believe in transparency. I had a physical, by the way. It came out well. We might all be surprised if my blood pressure is lower than Mayor Pete's. That might really shock everyone out there. And I think you should release your records from your physical. Secondly, when it comes to tax returns, everyone up here has released their tax returns, Mayor. I think, and it is a major issue because the President of the United States has been hiding behind his tax returns, even when courts order him to come forward with those tax returns. And I think, I don't care how much money anyone has. I think it's great you got a lot of money, but I think you've got to come forward with your tax returns.
Senator, I want to get to you in a second. Mayor Bloomberg, quick response to Senator Klobuchar.
We're releasing them. They'll be out in a few weeks, and that's just as fast as I can do it. Remember, I only entered into this race 10 weeks ago. all of my associates here have been at this for a couple of years, and we did
That's
not.
right. We have. Engaging with voters.
We're getting
and humbling
Let me ask you
ourselves
about something else, Mr. Mayor, because Mayor Bloomberg, let me ask you about something else.
And get it done.
Senator Warren.
Wish it were that simple.
I'll let you get in here, but Mayor
It would save
Bloomberg,
me a lot of money.
let me ask you about something else. Several former employees have claimed that your company was a hostile workplace for women. When you were confronted about it, you admitted making sexually suggestive remarks, saying, quote, "That's the way I grew up." In a lawsuit in the 1990s, according to the Washington Post, one former female employee alleged that you said, quote, "I would do you in a second." Should Democrats expect better from their nominee?
Let me say a couple things, and if I can have my full minute and a quarter, thank you. I have no tolerance for the kind of behavior that the Me Too movement has exposed. And anybody that does anything wrong in our company, we investigate it, and if it's appropriate, they're gone that day. But let me tell you what I do in my company and my foundation and in city government when I was there. In my foundation, the person that runs it's a woman. 70% of the people there are women. In my company, lots and lots of women have big responsibilities. They get paid exactly the same as men. And in my in City Hall, the top person, my deputy mayor, was a woman, and 40% of our commissioners were women. I am very proud of the fact that about 2 weeks ago, we were awarded. We were voted the the best place to work, second best place in America. If that doesn't say something about our employees and how happy they are, I don't know what does.
Senator Warren, you've been critical of Mayor Bloomberg on this issue.
Yes, I have, and I hope you heard what his defense was. I've been nice to some women. That just doesn't...
We have a very few non-disclosure agreements.
How many is
Let me
that?
finish.
How many is that?
None of them accuse me of doing anything other than maybe they didn't like a joke I told. And let me just put, there's agreements between two parties that wanted to keep it quiet, and that's up to them. They signed those agreements, and we'll live with it.
So wait, when you say it is up to, I just want to be clear. Some is how many? And when you say they signed them and they wanted them, if they wish now to speak out and tell their side of the story about what it is they allege, that's now okay with you? You're releasing them on television tonight?
Senator? No.
Is that right?
Senator, the company and somebody else, in this case, a man or a woman, or could be more than that, they decided when they made an agreement that they wanted to keep it quiet for everybody's interest. They signed the agreements, and that's what we're going to live with.
I'm sorry. No, the question is, are the women bound by being muzzled by you? And you could release them from that immediately, because understand, this is not just a question of the mayor's character. This is also a question about electability. We are not going to beat Donald Trump with a man who has who knows how many non-disclosure agreements and the drip, drip, drip of stories of women saying they have been harassed and discriminated against. That's not what we do as Democrats.
Mr. Vice President.
Look, let's get something straight here. It's easy. All the mayor has to do is say, you are released from the non-disclosure agreement. Period. We talk about transparency here. This guy got himself in trouble and maybe saying that he couldn't disclose what he did. He went to his company.
Just to be super clear, that was about the list of clients.
No,
so nobody gets the wrong idea. I know what you mean. No, you're right.
But he said, he went to the company and said, I want to be released. I want to be able to do it. Look, this is about transparency from the very beginning, whether it's your health record, whether it's your taxes, whether you have cases against you, whether or not people have signed non-disclosure agreements. You think that women, in fact, were ready to say, I don't want anybody to know about what you did to me? That's not how it works. The way it works is they say, look, this is what you did to me, and the mayor comes along and his attorney say, I will give you this amount of money if you promise you'll never say anything. That's how it works.
Mayor Bloomberg, final word to you.
I said we're not going to get to end these agreements because they were made consensually, and they have every right to expect that they will stay private.
If they want to release it, they should be able to release themselves.
Can I add a word to this?
Say yes.
You know, we talk about electability, and everybody up here wants to beat Trump. And we talked about stop and frisk, and we talked about the workplace that Mayor Bloomberg has established and the problems there. But maybe we should also ask how Mayor Bloomberg in 2004 supported George W. Bush, president, put money into Republican candidates for the United States Senate when some of us, Joe and I and others, were fighting for Democrats to control the United States Senate. And maybe we can talk about a billionaire saying that we should not raise the minimum wage, or that we should cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. If that's a way to beat Donald Trump, wow, I would be very surprised.
Thank you, Senator. Vanessa, to you.
Wait.
Senator Klobuchar, you're running on your Washington experience, but last week in a Telemundo
is humble and is able to admit that here and there, maybe wouldn't be a bad thing.
Mayor Buttigieg,
if you could let me,
a good response.
If you could,
yeah, look, I wouldn't liken this to trivial. I actually didn't know how many members were in the Knesset, so
well,
you got me there.
Go.
But you're staking your candidacy on your Washington experience. You're on the committee that oversees border security. You're on the committee that does trade. You're literally in part of the committee that's overseeing these things, and we're not able to speak to literally the first thing about the politics of the country to ourselves.
Are you trying to say that I'm dumb, or are you mocking me here, Pete?
I'm saying that you shouldn't trivialize
I made an error. People sometimes forget names. I am the one that has, number one, has the experience based on passing over 100 bills. If I could respond, this was a pretty big allegation. He's basically saying that I don't have the experience to be president of the United States. I have passed over 100 bills as the lead Democrat since being in the U.S. Senate. I am the one, not you, that has won statewide in congressional district after congressional district. And I will say, when you tried in Indiana, Pete, to run, what happened to you? You lost by over 20 points to someone who later lost to my friend Joe Donnelly. So don't tell me about experience. What unites us here is we want to win. Right. And I think we should put a proven winner in charge of the ticket.
This is a race for president. This is a race for president. If winning a race for Senate in Minnesota translated directly to becoming president, I would have grown up under the presidency of Walter Mondale. This is different. And the reason that I think we need to talk about Washington experience is that we should ask what that experience has led to. Experiences and certainly tenure is not always the same thing as judgment. If we're going to talk about votes in the Senate in Washington, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about a major policy.
Next question. Hello. Thank you. Senator Warren and Mayor Bloomberg, this question is for you. I want to talk about, and maybe this is appropriate here.
Can I just defend Senator Klobuchar for a minute? This is not right. I understand that she forgot a name. It happens. It happens to everybody on this stage. Look, you want to ask about whether or not you understand trade policy with Mexico? Have at it. And if you get it wrong, man, you ought to be held accountable for that. You want to ask about the economy and you get it wrong, you ought to be held accountable. You want to ask about 1,000 different issues and you get it wrong, you ought to be held accountable. But let's just be clear. Missing a name all by itself does not indicate that you do not understand what's going on. And I just think this is
again, and I ask you to look at the interview I did directly after the forum, which we went into great detail on Latin American policy. And I want to say one thing about Mayor Pete, where we just disagree. He was asked on a debate stage about the Mexican cartels, which are bad criminal organizations. He said that he would be open to classifying them as terrorist organizations. I actually don't agree with that. That is a very valid debate to have. I don't think that would be good for our security coordination with Mexico, and I think you got that wrong.
Well,
I've spent more time in Mexico than anybody. Can I get a chance to say something?
Oh, hold on.
Vice President.
See, thank you. Look, I'm the only one to spend extensive hundreds of hours in Latin America. I've met with this president. I've met with the last president, the one before that. I've been deeply involved in making sure that we have a policy that makes more sense than this god-awful president we have now. I'm the guy that put together $750 million to provide help for those Latin American countries that are the reason why people are leaving, because there's nothing for them to stay for. I've spent hours and hours and hours. And so you want to talk about experience in Washington. It's good to know with whom you're talking. It's good to know what they think. It's good to know what you think. And it's good to be able to have a relationship. That's what it's about.
All right. Well, we are clearly everybody's warmed up. We're going to take a short break and kick off the next hour with a topic many voters have said is top of mind, the climate crisis. We're back in a moment.
Exploring the heart of historic Europe with Viking, you'll get closer to iconic landmarks, to local life and legendary treasures, as you sail on board our patented, award-winning Viking longships. You'll enjoy many extras, including Wi-Fi, cultural enrichment from ship to shore, and engaging excursions.
As parents of 6, this network is one less thing I have to worry about.
Why the Aceves family chose Verizon.
We all use our phones very differently.
These two are always gaming, and this one's always on FaceTime.
And my oldest is learning to be a pilot. We need a reliable network because I need to know he's safe. Because as soon as he lands, he knows he better call Mama.
Mama. The network more people rely on gives you more. Like plans your family can mix and match starting at just $35. So everyone gets the plan they need and Apple Music on us. Plus iPhone 11 on us when you buy the latest iPhone. That's Verizon.
Every American deserves access to affordable, high-quality health care.
But one-size-fits-all government health insurance systems like Medicare for All, Medicare Buy-in, and the public option do the opposite.
American families would face higher taxes, longer wait times, and lower quality care.
They take choice and control away from patients and give it to politicians.
We can't afford a one-size-fits-all system.
Let's build on what's working and fix what's broken, not start over.
My parents never taught me anything about managing money.
The amount of student loan debt I have, I'm embarrassed to even say.
We just decided we didn't want debt any longer.
I didn't realize how easy investing could be.
I'm picking companies that I believe in. I think SoFi Money is amazing.
Thank you, SoFi.
SoFi, thank you. We love you.
If you looked at America like a bird, and that was all you knew, would you really understand it with just that point of view? We've got a different way to look at it from right here on the ground. We don't just see United States, we see United Towns. We're grateful for what you bring, and all the sparks you've shown, and the thousands of towns that we get to call home.
Fresh is important to me because what I put in my body determines what I get out of it. These are all fresh ingredients. They're delicious and they make me feel incredibly healthy. HelloFresh is my secret tool to feeling my best and doing my absolute best.
Go to HelloFresh.com and use code Leah10 for 10 free meals, including free shipping.
We both know there are Nazis here.
We would bring God's justice to them.
How did Nazis get into the States?
They were brought here.
This is the greatest mass conspiracy in our nation's history.
This is bigger than anyone realizes.
This Connecticut senator tried to put a positive spin on his fifth-place showing in the 2004 New Hampshire primary by declaring it a, quote, three-way tie for third place. And the answer is Joe Lieberman.
From Democratic voters, and many of them were about the climate crisis. It's an issue that uniquely impacts Nevadans. John Ralston from the Nevada Independent kicks us off now.
So, y'all ready to play some Nevada trivia now? I'm only half joking here.
Reinstate all of the elimination of what Trump has eliminated in terms of EPA. I would secondly make sure that we had 500,000 new charging stations in every new highway we built in the United States of America or repaired. I would make sure that we once again made sure that we got the mileage standards back up, which would have saved over 12 billion barrels of oil had he not walked away from it. And I would invest in rail. Rail can take hundreds of thousands, millions of cars off the road if we have high-speed rail.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I want to get some of the rest of you in on this because y'all have plans. Yeah. Mayor Bloomberg, let me read what you said about this issue. You said you want to intensify U.S. and international